Welcome to Deges Dragons.
I thought this was going to be hard.
Welcome to Deges Dragons.
Who wants some of the ripper?
Take chance, baby. Woo!
Smoke out!
He's clearly Captain Crunch. I'm a man of the people.
Shattered world.
Ripper always knows! Degecast.
And welcome to another episode of the Degecast, the supplemental podcast for our YouTube show, Deges and Dragons. I'm your host, Nate Lindberg. You can find me on social media at Nate Lindberg, and you can follow our brand on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Degetime. That's Degetime. So you guys just watched the second episode of Kids on Bikes, our gameplay for Kids on Bikes. And sitting here talking about this today, we got a couple people here with me. First, we've got Tony. Tony is the only person to sit on every player panel for every game we've played thus far this season. He's also playing Nelson Jr. here. Tony, say hey.
What's up?
We also have our resident GM and therapy expert with us, Conrad. Conrad, how you doing this afternoon, man?
Great.
Wonderful. I was wondering if you were even there. Just thinking about your response. Letting it toil in your brain before great.
Everything I say is great.
You know, that should be Tony's line. Tony's line. Tony the Tiger. They're great.
If I could strangle you through Zoom, I would.
Which is exactly why I said it. Which is exactly.
Got a Vader force choke it.
Oh God! If you guys could see, I can see him. You guys can't see him. He's force choking me through the screen right now, guys. He is force choking me through the screen. Unfortunately, it's not working because the force isn't real as much as I would love for it to be. Mostly lightsabers.
You underestimate the power of the dark side.
You got a good Sith voice. So, Kids on Bikes. Kids on Bikes. That's what we're here about. We're here to talk about the second episode of Kids on Bikes on Deges and Dragons. So I'm gonna start things off by kicking this over to Conrad. I want to talk to Conrad a little bit about the world building scene here. World building here. What went into this scene in the cafeteria and all that. Because I know, just kind of talking with Conrad a little bit off mic here. It was not really meant to be a scene where we spent almost an entire episode. It was really meant to kind of be like a 5-minute thing. So kind of want to talk to Conrad about that and what was going through his head during all of this.
So just to kind of peek behind the curtain as a game master. So I do prepare lots of content in advance where, that's just my style. There are plenty who improv a lot more than I do. Like I know Billy, who you'll see in the next series on Shattered. I've seen like his game master notes for some of the stuff he does, and it's just like chicken scratch on like a loose leaf sheet of paper, while I'll like write out, half a journal of stuff.
So what you're saying is Billy sucks as a GM.
No, considering I too do a lot of improv while I'm running game. It's I think that I'm just lazy though. That might be my downside.
Well,
so like I before we started playing, I had a whole slew of teachers, several who just never come up, and I have all these different children who are part of the school who never come up. And the reason for that is for scenes like this. So I had really planned out, the ride to school. Even that right from the start didn't go as I had envisioned it, because Sam's character, Chad, had a Camaro, and then Dan's character, Nelson Sr., who was the adult, rode on a bicycle. So right from the start,
But would you really call him an adult?
I mean, legally.
He was the oldest member of the party.
Yeah. So, right from the start, you can't anticipate what people are going to do. So for me, the way to prepare, I make lots of content. It just makes it easier for me to direct where we're going. So, I have the initial classroom scenarios where Dr. Audette starts going over his science, and then we move on to the history class, and then to lunch at the cafeteria, and that was kind of we'll see how it goes. I didn't plan out any specific interactions whatsoever, whereas the classroom scenes, I have set things that I want to say to drive the plot. And here it's just it just makes sense for the time of day. We'll have our first 2 classes and then we'll go to lunch. And then it, evolved into the entire episode. I mean, even though 3 characters depart from the cafeteria, we still end up there in the end. So, I guess like the interaction with Timmy, for example, I didn't know where people were going to go. So Dan being
Nelson Sr.
Being Nelson Sr. is like, okay, I'm going to sit down with the kids, which, he's rebuffed immediately. So to deal with that.
The seat's taken, Dad.
Yeah. He sits at the head of the table, kind of sprawling out all of these notes, which from there, it's like very easy to build interest, where it's like, okay, there's some insane dad who's sitting at, if you envision that from your own middle school days, if somebody's, dad who is known for being somewhat eccentric spreads out sheets of paper and was bragging earlier about discovering the location of Noah's Ark, that's going to grab attention. So, that's what I thought. Okay, so we already had the interaction with Timmy Taxel in the classroom where he respects Nelson Sr. and he does that because he has kind of free reign in his presence. And then the things that he preaches are really contrary to the curriculum. So Timmy, flocks to him. And so I have him come over to the table. So I'm actually trying to have him become a member of the group. Me pushing for that, is kind of twofold, where he's this bully, so he can help even get force other kids into doing what the players want characters to do, but also just to have this silly interaction go on between Nelson Sr. and this bully who wants to be a part of the insanity. But because of the earlier interactions, which makes total sense, he broke one of Nate, who is Sean. He broke one of his action figures.
Macho Man.
Yeah. So then, of course, the way Nate responds to that is, I get out of here. And
I didn't snap him into a Slim Jim, and I should have.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So then, but then the flow is natural, where then, Sam, who is playing Chad, Nate's older brother, and he sees what's going on, comes over, and he just piles on. And so where Nate is trying to intimidate Timmy to go away, now we have Chad, who is this huge intimidating guy by comparison, saying, all right, yeah, no, get out of here. And from
Star
there,
athlete, he's like, nah, don't knock my head in with the baseball bat, man.
right. Yeah. I mean, so we point out Timmy Taxel is, 4.5 feet tall, whereas Chad is, a fully grown 18-year-old baseball star. So the
a little bit of a size difference.
Yeah, a little bit of a size difference. And then from there, I was actually quite shocked how things developed, where Nate then becomes really interested as Sean in what Nelson Sr.'s doing, to the point where I have, Vice Principal Geraldine go to, reel that in and say, no, you need to stay in the cafeteria and behave and all this stuff. To which point Nate's just like, nope.
I'm faster than you.
Yeah. So that really shocked me. And, as a game master, again, you really just, you can't prepare for what people are going to do.
And I wonder if that shocked you, because Conrad and I, we went to elementary and middle school together, and I probably would have never done that. I would have never ran away from a principal or member of authority, partially because they probably would have caught me. I was always a fat kid, and partially because I didn't ever want to get in trouble. So very out of character for me in terms of like myself. But as far as the character goes, I thought that was a great character moment.
Yeah, especially you kind of used yourself as a template for Sean as well, liking wrestling, kind of like the engineering aspect of everything too.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, because
try to keep it close to home, a little bit more familiar.
Not to go on too much of a tangent while we're talking about the scene here, but for me, the reason that I kind of made this character a little bit of how I was as a kid was because where this was the pilot episode, I was focused on shooting it. I was focused on the green screen and audio and all this stuff. It was just easy for me to play myself in a way, a little different than exactly how I was as a kid. But I wanted to try and keep it simple so I could focus on the actual show. But,
yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people do that as well for like their intro to tabletop gaming. It's like, well, I don't want to do something outlandish because, I might not be able to play this effectively. So I'll just keep it close to home. I'll make the character similar to my own personality. So I can kind of build off of that from there.
God, I was naive as a kid. So that kind of plays through with Sean a bit as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to completely derail the conversation of what you were talking about.
No, I mean that's kind of like another aspect of role playing where you do like any character you play is a part of you. Like you can really go out of your way to try to play something that's nothing like you, but that's still your view of how that is. Like you can't role play something that isn't you because you're doing it, like, what I mean? Like you will always bring in your experience to whatever character you're going to be. And you might need to like really think in depth of ways to like purposefully divert yourself away from, what your core personality traits. But even that's still, you're always, it's always a part of you. Sorry, Nate, you were just to say something.
Oh, no, all I was going to say was, so everything in my life, and by me, I mean Nate, not Sean, but everything in my life, I end up relating to wrestling in somehow, some way, shape, or form. And something that you just said kind of sparked this with me. So, as you guys know, I'm a huge wrestling fan. I've got a podcast devoted to wrestling and NXT myself. So I've been in the wrestling bubble for most of my life, and you're talking about character creation, and it's hard to role play something that you're not saying it's impossible, but that it's more difficult to play something that's out of your comfort zone. If you're a very introverted person and you got to try and play an extrovert or something like that. In the wrestling world, obviously, wrestling is based around larger than life characters. Wrestling's not real, guys. It's scripted. It's just like any other show. I'm going to go back to I'm going to talk about the 90s, early 90s real quick. And you had all these weird characters like Duke the Dumpster Drozy. And you had like these just crazy, weird, outlandish characters that were like...
Doink.
Yeah, Doink the Clown and, stuff like that. And they were just these characters, and the people portraying them... Now, granted, Matt Bourne, who portrayed Doink the Clown, did a fantastic job. So this doesn't necessarily apply to Doink, but like Duke the Dumpster Drozy or God, I'm trying to think. There's a whole bunch of others that the names just aren't coming to me right now. But they basically played like these working men, these working stiffs, and just happened to wrestle. Thurman Plug, his name was Thurman Plug. He was a NASCAR driver. He ended up becoming Hardcore Holly in the Attitude Era, if you guys remember him.
No one does.
Nobody does. Nobody does. Nobody knows what I'm talking about here. We're talking about wrestling all of a sudden, but my whole point being is they wanted to have these wrestlers portray these characters that were nothing like their personality, nothing like the actual person portraying them. Some of the best wrestling characters ever are people playing themselves dialed up to 11. For instance, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, The Rock. It's all of the, like, their character is like their real life personality, just really dialed up. I feel like in RPG gaming, that can kind of play true as well, especially for somebody that's new. Something Tony just said is, he feels like a lot of people starting in RPG gaming, kind of lean towards, lean towards something that they know, or they take their own personality, like I did here with Sean, and just kind of tweak it or turn it up to 11. And I think that is what really helps to create a memorable character for somebody starting out, just being myself, somebody that's relatively newer to gaming. If you already understand who your character is going into it, either because it's already it's like you or some other character that you really, really, really know, I think that's going to help give you the best experience possible in gaming. And please correct me if you think I'm wrong.
Yeah, kind of. It relates to what I was saying. Yeah, that every character that you play is going to be, some part of you, whatever that is. Like every time I sit down to as a player, I personally, make a point to always explore, new parts of myself. From like a therapy aspect, this is an important thing to do with role playing. Is when we do them as exercises with, whether it be for addiction or depression or anxiety, and so like say, for example, you have some sort of phobia, and let's say that it's of like the water, and when we go to role play, the ability to expose yourself to water, whether it be like on a boat or to actually like jumping in a pool to swim and whatnot, that's something new that you need to explore of yourself. And we'll do it gradually and do it, from a safe place. And that's what role-playing games are. They're a safe place to explore these new things. So, just the concept of your character being like, okay, I'm going to, go on this boat, and like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And you actually play out the scenario. Maybe you are shipwrecked, but in this setting, it's safe. Like you're not going to be in the middle of the ocean, like having to deal with, animals or, getting to safety or whatnot. And that's kind of an extreme thing too, like the general fear of water, we're not just going to drop you in like the middle of the ocean. That would be much more gradual. And so, you could have something along the beach, and you role play that scenario in terms of making characters close to yourself, as we were saying before, with, and dialing them up to 11, it's like, okay, yeah, we have a character that's close to myself, that their new thing is they're able to hop in the water or, face whatever the fear is there, because it's usually something else, like the fear of the water is, a fear of drowning, or, fear of a particular animal. Or as you unravel the phobia, that's how it, you start to be able to confront it more and more. Like the fear, so, fear of enclosed spaces, claustrophobia is, a fairly common fear. And so we look at that and we go to like the next step, what is that really? Is it a fear of being stuck? And then is it a fear of starving, or a fear of, I'm going to need to use the restroom when that's going on? And with role playing, we play these parts of ourselves that can do powerful things, and so confront these different things. And the new aspects allow us to explore something new. So where Nate is playing a character, Sean, who is like close to himself, but then, what is going to happen when I say I'm faster than you and I go outrun the vice principal? And we're getting this chance now to play out a possible outcome of something that probably crossed his mind, but he never would have done. And that's like such a powerful part of role playing, is you get to have these experiences that are close to home, and you get to see a new outcome, and you get to do it from a safe place. You get to do it from a powerful place. So yeah, that's just a great part of role playing, and we got to see that, you know, firsthand in this particular episode where, you know, Nate confronts a bully. Nate decides to follow this eccentric mad scientist type guy. He gets to defy an authority figure, and he's
all things I probably would not have done as a 10-year-old kid myself.
Right. Yeah. So all these things that he wouldn't have done, but now he's playing himself to a degree, and he's now exploring all of these new things.
Exactly.
And I think he's like, Nate has, you know, reiterated that, like, he just loves Kids on Bikes. And I think it's the moments like this where it's like, oh, I got to play out all of these scenarios that I myself, you know, never did. And they're still close to home, as opposed
it's like
to
a tangible fantasy instead of like a high fantasy.
No, and I kind of agree with that. I think you might actually have hit the nail on the head with why I look so fondly back on this particular game and this particular story. And again, you know, this isn't to knock on anything else that we do throughout the course of this season on Deges and Dragons. But I think I related so much with Sean Breckenheimer. I mean, growing up, like Conrad, myself, we had a good core group of, like, you know, 6 kids that, I mean, to this day we still hang out and talk and whatnot. And even then, like, I was like one of the Dan, our buddy Dan,
the episode.
Dan's in the episode. He's one of them. You know, Nelson Sr., you know, we've all been friends for so long. I was the last one actually kind of added to that group because I came into the school later than all of the rest of them. Conrad came in the year before me, but the rest of the guys, I think, had known each other since either kindergarten or first grade. So where I was like the new kid in the group, at least for the first, you know, year or so, not that these guys didn't make me feel welcome or whatever, but I did kind of feel like a little bit of an outcast and kind of the new kid. I think that kind of, you know, was part of like just me being shy and an introvert as a kid. And with Sean, I start out kind of thinking like, and I even remember just in character creation thinking that like my character was going to be kind of along those similar lines, a little bit more timid and shy. But then, like, as we actually get there and play, I got into it, and I'm like starting to think about like, oh yeah, all right, you know, what would I do, or what would I like to do in this situation? Not necessarily what I do, but what would I like to do? Would I like to go tell the principal or vice principal to like screw off, or, you know, would I just sit there and, you know, be complacent? Like, you know, so it was interesting to kind of like find that within myself to then bring to this character. But it was also really fun to kind of find these other aspects of myself and indulge them where I probably wouldn't as a 10-year-old kid. As a 32-year-old adult, I have no problem with confrontation and things like that at this point if they, you know, present themselves in the world. Not that I would ever try to fight somebody or purposely go picking a fight or anything like that. But if a confrontation did come up in the world, I mean, you know, me being a lot more older and more mature now, I know how to handle that stuff. But as a kid, I wouldn't. But it was cool to kind of like go back and think through the lens of a child, of somebody who's, you know, 10 years old, and then think about what I would have done at that age, and kind of then do what I would have liked to do. So I definitely see what you're saying, where this can be a very powerful tool when used in the right way.
Yeah. So, you know, everybody in Kids on Bikes got to, you know, explore something new or different. You know, I don't know Sam that well, but, you know, maybe he was a baseball star and now he was just kind of reliving that. You know, maybe he doesn't have any siblings, where, you know, Nate has a younger sister, but in this he's got an older brother. And, you know,
technically I've got 2 older brothers too, but my entire life I've considered them my little older brothers. I think I've been the oldest one, even though I'm the 3rd youngest.
Yeah, older enough where they never, you know, they wouldn't have been in the same school, and
right.
You know, the interactions were considerably different than Sean and Chad. So that relationship certainly different.
Yeah, and Sam is actually, he's a coworker of mine. And I've known Sam now for about maybe 7 or 8 months. At the time, I think I'd only really known Sam for about 4 months, 4 or 5, like 3 or 4 months at that point. But good kid. We'll actually be talking to Sam next week on this very show. He's going to come on and talk about his role as Chad Breckenheimer. So I am looking forward to that. And we can use that time to pick his brain on his mindset going into playing Chad. Tony, anything you wanted to add or anything like that?
No, I mean, all the characters kind of got their little limelight in the episode, which was nice, even though we kind of separated near the end.
Oh, that's another thing about being a game master that you bring that up. Actually keeping the players together is extremely difficult. That's always something that's just a juggling act. Like, how do I rope this in while it makes sense to every single character and we get to actually advance the plot?
Yeah, I feel that we're kind of coming in that mindset as well, kind of from Dungeons and Dragons, where you never want to split the party because when you do that, everybody dies. But I feel like Kids on Bikes is a lot more of a narrative game, so it's more advantageous to not necessarily have everybody in the exact same scene, but it acts kind of more like almost like a TV show, where there are characters in the TV show, but every scene doesn't encompass every character of that show, because that would just, kind of be a cluster.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I liked where it was initially going. It was like, okay, yeah, everyone's going to go out to the woods. And then it was like, oh, no, we're going back. But then at that point, I was like, okay, at least, I'll try to keep like Dan and Sam together and Nate and Tony together. And that also is like, so I don't have to have 4 different ongoing scenes where I'm like, all right, where did we last leave you? And what are you doing at this moment? And then it kind of can become boring if you're like that 4th person. So it's like, okay, I touched on you. Now I shift to you. Now I shift to you. And now the 4th person's been waiting for all of these other scenes to unfold. So yeah,
I mean, I feel you did a good job, even though we had like 2 little side stories kind of going simultaneously. You kind of did a good job to keep the narrative on the same track. So, spoilers, we eventually, get back into a group, but
yeah. Yes, thank you. So yeah, that's something for other players who have never been a game master. That's something you get to look forward to.
Noted. Duly noted. Because the one game that I DM'd, which you guys will see coming up, Worldwide Wrestling RPG, I mean, it's kind of hard to not keep. Actually, you don't even really keep the group together in that game because everybody's kind of playing one by one. So, but no, duly noted for the next time there's a game I want to play. And spoilers, I'm crafting one.
Ooh. Spoiler for me. I didn't realize this.
That's actually the first time I've verbalized it, so nobody knew.
Ooh. Yeah. So I mean, I knew.
Well, yeah. Conrad knew with his powers of clairvoyance.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yes. All right, guys. This has been another episode of the Degecast. Do you guys want to be a part of this very show? You can be. You can send your emails, any sort of questions, comments, or anything like that. You can send to degetime@gmail.com. That's DEGETIME @gmail.com. You could also call us. You could call us and leave us a voicemail at the official Degecast voicemail line. That number is 617-506-9686. Leave a message, and we will listen to it on this very show, respond to you, and give you our thoughts on whatever it is you leave for us. But for the Degecast, I am Nate Lindberg. Again, you can find me on social media at Nate Lindberg. You can follow our brand on social media at Degetime. It's DEGETIME. And Conrad, who are you?
I'm Conrad.
Conrad,
to everybody, and stay safe out there.
All right, Tony, we know who you are, so say something.
Yep. Something. You can, I guess, follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tony, son of Zygmus, or reach out to me on my Discord channel, or our Discord channel. I'm usually in there, so if you ask me something, I'll probably respond promptly.
Absolutely. I've always loved your dad's name, Zygmus. Zygmus. Love it. All right, guys, that'll do it for us today, and we will talk to you next week. Take care.